All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday's Links to Learning. We are here every Tuesday with some good speakers, some good knowledge that's being passed on to you. So we are honored that you have joined us this afternoon. It is the first Tuesday of May. Can we believe that it's already May? Like, no. And so I believe in Cree, I looked this up. May is the egg laying month. So, and actually I hear outside my windows, I hear the birds chirping, the sun is kind of shining. So spring is definitely in the air. So we thank Creator for a gift of another day, an opportunity for us to gather virtually to take in the good knowledge that's going to be passed on. Our guest speaker today is Lee, and the topic is exploring Indigenous entrepreneurship, and it's a great topic. So we look forward to having you here, Lee. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
There's a little bit of a change. If you've been part of Links to Learning, we always invite you to fill out those surveys at the end. We always appreciate your voice, your feedback, your comments. When you fill that out, at the end of the month or at the very beginning of June, your name will be, every single time you show up, your name will be entered to win, check this out, a $500 Visa gift card. So it is in your best interest to fill out that evaluation. We love to hear from you. All right, so my name is Michelle. I'm joining from Amiskwaci, Waskagan, Edmonton Treaty 6. I'm honored to be here. I again give thanks to Creator for the gift of another day and this moment that we can come together from all across Turtle Island just to learn and to share perhaps even some of our stories. So there will be opportunity at the end for you to ask any questions or have any comments. So please know that your voice is welcome here. But throughout today's presentation, in the event you have any questions or comments, feel free to use that chat box. We love to hear from you, and I will definitely make note of any questions that there are throughout today's presentation. All right, so it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, Lee Ahenakew. Ooh. You would have to correct me.
Close, yeah. Ahtahkakoop. It's actually very phonetic, but
okay, awesome. Well, welcome, Lee. So Lee's a collaborative and engaging leader that builds business opportunities with First Nations and industry. He's a member of, do you want to take it away?
Ahtahkakoop.
Thank you, Cree Nation, an expert in business planning and development with an ability to open new markets and build relations, and with broad knowledge and experience working with First Nations and industry across Canada and the United States. He develops business relationships with a focus in the natural resource, renewable energy, and utility sectors. He has delivered community benefit through partnership development, organizational strategies, community engagement, and quality processes to advance Indigenous inclusion and social responsibility, including benefit agreement, negotiations, and implementation. Okay, so this guy is bringing a lot to the table today.
Yes, I hope.
You are like, after just reading that, you have a lot to offer. You're going to share some good knowledge. I just know it. So most recently, Lee served in several contract CEO positions related to construction and labor, renewable energy, and indoor vertical farming. He has held leadership roles for the largest mining company in the world for community engagement, and as a VP of member relations of the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business. So currently, Lee is the principal of Lee Ahenakew and Associates.
I'll work on it.
We will work on that. Associates and consulting, working with Indigenous businesses and industry in the areas of business development, water, wastewater utility development, community engagement, governance, and industry and Indigenous relations. So he's the past chair of the Board of Governors of the University of Saskatchewan and a director for the First Nations Power Authority of Saskatchewan. Woo! So we got a powerhouse basically in the house today. So we welcome you, Lee, and thank you all for joining us at today's Links to Learning. So Lee, I'm just going to pass this virtual mic over to you, and you're just going to lend us your knowledge this afternoon.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Michelle. And yeah, really happy to be here in Treaty 6 territory in Saskatoon. And yeah, looking forward to sharing with you. So thanks everyone that showed up. I didn't know if it'd all be all strangers or not, but I see a few of my colleagues have signed in. So I feel like the pressure's on now that I have to do very good. So yeah, Heather, Mike, thanks for joining. And with that, I will, there's someone else too. Heather, Mike, I saw. And anyway, I will get to that in a bit. And I'm sure I'll maybe bring up some, and Milt, sorry, Milt. Yeah, that's right. So I'm going to share really, yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. I've worked in a lot of different industries and done a lot of different things. Currently, I'll tell you more about this in a little bit, but about to launch business number 4 that I've been an owner in. So, but I decided today just to talk about a few areas I feel are really important. Whether you're an entrepreneur, you know, you're a partner in a business, or you have ownership interest in a business, or you know, you're working in a development corporation that's you know, got a board. You got your strategies you're trying to implement, and kind of pulling from things I've done, and whether I'm working within an organization or I'm in the business myself, serving clients, or chairing the board myself. So those 3 things I think are really important that that people know you have to get right, but it's easy to do just enough when, you know, these are areas where you should really focus a lot of attention. One being planning, another one being governance, and the third being leadership. And those are all really important in any business and any organization. And I find that a lot of times everyone knows they need to do planning. There's a lot of ways to go about doing it. I think, you know, the more planning, the better, and the more ownership you have over that planning, and the more engaged you are in that planning, the better. When it comes to governance, really, you know, best case, you know, governance practices are really what's going to, you know, set an organization up for success in the long term. So governance, and between what the board does, what the CEO does, and the line between those two, and trying to find that the good balance between the two, and yeah, what can happen if you get that right. And as well with just, you know, leadership, that'll be a theme throughout it, but more on, you know, you planning for that, but also making sure, you know, you invest in your own personal leadership skills, those of the organization, and make sure you're, you know, elevating everyone in terms of leadership, because leadership is a thing that, you know, when it comes to business, it's really, it's learned. And there's a lot of skills that'll help you. And the more training you do, the more you prepare yourself and others in the organization, it's going to benefit big time. It's really the leadership that sets the stage for success. So first of all, oh, I know Milt's going to get a chuckle of this probably, but my first entrepreneurship, which is kind of just a funny story I thought I'd open with, but isn't really as relevant. I'll share it anyways. When I was in university, I got the great idea with a friend of mine to go into partnership and buy a business. And we're looking at restaurants and bars, and one came up for sale. And it was in a great area of town, right by the exhibition grounds, on the way out to last stop on the highway towards what's now a Whitecap, Dakota's destination, you know, casino, golf resort. And I looked at it, and we did great planning. We tapped into some funding to do the business plan, got that all going, did our business plan, and it really looked like a great opportunity in terms of the market. Is like a real blue collar neighborhood, is the only, one of a couple of places in the area, but the only one that was really kind of pubby, and we wanted to rebrand it and fix it up a bit and launch it. So, this was the business we bought was called Frankie and Johnny's. And I'm proud to say that today, after we owned it, someone else owned it, and it's now one of the largest bars in Saskatoon. It became really successful in that spot. And then they moved downtown, about a 3-story building, and it's this massive, always packed place called the Crazy Cactus. But the thing was, when we opened it, we want to rename it the Crazy Buffalo, which I still think is a much better name, and do a Tex-Mex kind of theme. But we actually got a sign made that said Crazy Buffalo. And after we did not succeed in year one, we ended up having to shut it down. New owners took over. I lost what I put into it and had to pay a loan back while I was going to university, which really was unfortunate. But that was my lesson in leadership and picking partners. So not to come to the table, with the money that he's supposed to, and ended up not being a great leader and having more fun, let's say, at the bar than working. And a year later, we couldn't do it. So we closed up shop, and that was it. But very important that, it's when you get excited about a business idea, it's really, and you get someone you click with, it's really easy to get excited and just keep running down that path without doing your due. You do your planning, but part of that is doing your due diligence to make sure you've got the right partner, that you can trust them, and that they know, there's clear expectations for everyone in that partnership. So that's all part of planning too. So while that wasn't a great start to entrepreneurship, I learned a lot of really important lessons from that. After that was, I said, in university, and moving on the planning theme. I ended up, when I went after that, I moved to Toronto, and I did work with Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business twice at CCAB. I ran, when they had chapters, the Ontario chapter, and started a lot of conferences and great initiatives. And I worked in sales management for 5 years in water and wastewater treatment. And that's how I kind of got started in the utility sector and learned how construction gets done, but also, just learned about sales and how to close deals. And that's something that's, again, another skill that if you're an entrepreneur, you have to know how to ask for the order, and be on the phone every day, making sure you get the deals done. That's really, and as a leader, you really have to, you have to be the lead salesperson in what you do. So I'll kind of skip that part of my career. I learned a lot of great skills in corporations that help when I'm helping people working on my own businesses, launching businesses. That was a great experience, especially on the sales ends and working with teams, learning about, management as well, and management processes and planning and yearly planning cycles and all those things that corporations are really good at doing, and always focusing on the bottom line and targets and performance evaluations and those types of things. So I learned a lot working in corporate Canada. I also did 2 years at Xerox, launching their Indigenous programs and corporate social responsibility, but also on the sales end. So most of the things I've been in, the business is doing the Indigenous communities a market for them, but they also have their programs for corporate social responsibility they want to pursue. So I worked a lot in that area. So after doing that with a couple of companies and working at CCAB, when I was sick of traveling in sales, you get pretty road weary, and I was stuck in Chicago O'Hare overnight again and sleeping on a bench. And I thought, that's it, I'm leaving. Like, I'm getting out of here. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm just going to go consult, because there seemed to be a lot of companies. And this is back in about 2006, 2005, 2006. And anyways, a lot of companies were starting to realize that they had to do better in the Indigenous space, and that we are a huge market as well and a huge part of the economy, and there's partnership opportunities there. So I thought, why can't I work with companies and doing this consulting rather than working for a large corporation or what have you, right? So that night I bought my book and started making my business plan, and that was my first leap into it and what I'm going to do in consulting. And I want to brand myself. That's called Foresight Consulting with the number 4. There's a few more Foresight Consultings out there now, I know. So anyways, it was really good. Great 6 years. It never turns out to be, you basically go where the market is, right? In consulting, and it never turns out to be exactly what you meant to do, but opportunities will come up and you'll start going into various areas. So I did, so I had things that were unique that I was doing as a consulting firm and building some of that IP. One of them is I used GIS and I built a national database of Indigenous communities and demographics, everything I could grab on communities, basically, so that I'm working with clients that could understand, where we are as nation, big we get into the context. Talking about, and still today, everyone wants to advance reconciliation, working with Indigenous communities, but they don't actually know for the area they're working in, what are we actually, who's there and how many people, and, and beyond that, how in each region people have approached different things differently, and they're focused on different sectors. And, the nations are, it's much different from east to west coast in every province. So that was kind of my niche, is where I built that IP, where I could do really good analysis. But then there's, I did a lot of business planning at the time too. I did some branding projects for Indigenous specific branding and put teams together. So kind of, going where the market is with things as well. Right now I'm doing Lee Ahenakew and Associates Consulting, which I've done. I've been doing that now. It's actually 5 years, 6 years now. I'm coming up to 6 years. So after leaving BHP Billiton, and so that was a consulting business. But it's really, again, I decided not to focus so much as Foresight, is just people know who I am and what I do, and then I work in the space and Indigenous industry relations, and went for that. But I did, I decided I was going to go straight consulting, but I was also, thinking about contract CEO work. So that's, I'll tell a couple of stories on the next couple of topics, but I did 3 contract CEO positions, one for the Tribal Council, one is interim for First Nations Power Authority, and one with a company called Nutriponics that does indoor vertical farming. So using aquaponics, so fish waste is the feed source. So I've been doing this for 5 years now. It's going good. I'm just I'm in the planning phase of another business, which is I'm really excited about, and I got the okay to talk about it today because I'm still under a confidentiality agreement. But it's going to be an environmentally friendly and health friendly cleaning product called EcoLogic. The brand's been around for 5 years, so we have an agreement with the manufacturer to distribute, be the distributor for that product. So basically, it's a 26 household cleaning products. They're environmentally friendly and non-harmful to your health, 98% organic. So as opposed to a lot of the cleaners on the market today that are very bad for your health. So I'm going through all this planning right now. And without getting to the details, it's called EcoLogic, all one word, just like it sounds, but with a K at the end instead of a C. So EcoLogic, and we've got a website up, you can see it. But with this business, because I've been in sales management, so I've had to actually create a lot of agreements where I'm signing up agencies to sell for, whether it's Xerox or Xenon, or the two key places, people that represent us. So now, the tables are turned on me. So that really helped me in working with our manufacturing partner, because it's I had to negotiate with them, but as being a distributor and having the rights for their product. And we started, talking about the partnership over a year ago now, a year and 4 months ago. And I have a partner that I've known since high school. He happened to know the family that owns the business as well. And that's how we got the opportunity. And we decided they hadn't been successful in what they're doing before. So they approached me about making a majority Indigenous owned company and then pursuing, business that way. I'd have to say it's not an Indigenous front facing product. It's really very, mainstream, but obviously being Indigenous owned gets you a lot of advantages, and we're excited about it. The plan is, well, it's going to be manufactured. The manufacturer makes it, but then we're going to need, distribution and logistics centers where we're doing business. So all that's going to be on reserve, and we're hoping to provide a lot of opportunities. And distribution is a great business for a lot of transportation involved, a lot of, starting positions, and we looking at ways we can use partnerships here and in the US to get greater market coverage. So more on that in the future, and I'll be announcing that officially sometime soon. But I want to bring that up because a lot of times when you're getting into it, always takes longer, I find, and I've negotiated throughout my career in various positions and to get agreements done, and it always takes a lot longer than you think. Over a year ago, everyone agreed this is the right team. We're on the same page. These are the markets we can go after. But little things can really, I find there's always a few little key issues that drag on, and it can take a long time to come to agreement on that. And we thought we'd be done 6 months ago. And we literally will likely get our agreement signed in the next 2 weeks. And I've found that it usually takes double the time that you think to negotiate with a partner when you're doing agreement like that. And the same was when I worked on benefit agreements for, in mining with BHP. Those negotiations, we thought we'd be done quick, but little issues become big issues, and you can only bite off 1 or 2 issues at a time. So it's really important when you're forming these agreements with anyone that you pick your 2 or 3 things you're going to approach each meeting, right? And have a plan of what you're going to work through over the course of negotiating that agreement. And little things like terms or dispute resolution, like financial terms, dispute resolution, try to look at those things that are going to potentially rights, or other ones are like when you got to make a change or you want to terminate the agreement, how much time you have to do that. It's these really issues, and you got to think very long term as to what could happen over the next years, 5 years, 10 years, right? So in this case, I actually did a lot of financial forecasting to say these are the terms, financial terms between us that are going to work to actually be able to go after these deals, and and illustrate that using numbers, not just saying we need a better deal, but bringing the reason to the person that you're working with to get that agreement done, and showing them clearly what this means in the long term if we take this option versus that. So anyways, excited to launch that. You'll see us in co-ops across Western Canada in the coming weeks. So a couple of tips from the consulting I've done in actually doing planning and business planning is really, as an entrepreneur, it's important. Working with clients, I'd always get them to, number one, do their competitive analysis and know absolutely everything about their competitors. I find that a lot of people are really good at, coming up with that they know how to make the product. They know how to, really know in their heads why it's better than competing products or services. But when you really do the homework of exactly who's your competition, what's their price point, how are they promoting, how are they distributing, all the things that you look at marketing in your own plan. It's really important to really assess your competition clearly, so and know it front to back, right, and see how that affects your strategy. So I think that, you know, it's great if you're working with someone to do your business plan for you, but the more you can be involved in actually doing that research, the better, right? In my case, it's going to grocery stores and trying not to get kicked out while I'm taking pictures of all the pricing, all the competitors' products, and their displays and things like that. So anyways, that's really important. And again, just the you know, the financial planning and sticking to it. I've had clients that, you know, blew their capital budgets, which I warned them not to do, and they ran short on working capital. You know, make sure before you launch something that you're going to have that working capital to see it through. That can really be difficult if you don't, and watch your cash flow carefully, of course. And I think, again, with, you know, there's the planning, but it comes down to that planning, you know, governance, leadership, and in ventures. And so moving on to the governance part of things, I'll comment this. It's more from, you know, I've chaired, you know, not-for-profits, a lot of not-for-profit boards, and it doesn't matter if it's not-for-profit or for-profit. You know, understanding the line, you know, having some, obviously learn about governance, take governance training if you can. Yeah, I'm a certified professional director. It's really important to make sure you keep the line between the board and the CEO straight, and the CEO is empowered to do their job. And the board really, you know, the clearest way I can put it is that the board should be responsible for strategy. And really that's best case for best case governance practices. The board does strategy, the CEO runs the business, and the board only has one employee, and that's the CEO. You know, that's who you evaluate. It's their responsibility to evaluate everyone else. And the board has to approve the strategic plan. Now, the strategic plan, the CEO can provide input to that strategic plan. Of course, they should be shaping it and doing the environmental scan and, you know, figuring out what, you know, key elements of the strategy going forward, the, you know, who, what, where, how, when, kind of high level stuff, not the business plan, but really the strategy for the organization. And then it's really the job of the CEO to make sure they're you know, moving the business organization significantly in the direction of the strategic plan. And, you know, all organizations are going to have their you know, their goals for the year, and you have your CEO's goals, your president or executive director's goals, but making sure that, you know, you're really rigorous in terms of keeping that line, letting the CEO do their job, and pursue the strategic plan that you've set out. And they're responsible for creating the plan and managing the people to get it there, managing the organization to get it there, but also to you know, make sure you do their give them feedback constantly, right, throughout the year, and, you know, make sure that you're doing a proper performance appraisal for them, and getting set up for success for the next year. So I'd say it's really, you know, with governance, a lot of governance is that you know, keeping that when you're working with an organization with a board and a CEO or executive director, is really making sure that everyone knows what their roles are as a board, and that you're really focusing on that strategy component, and letting the CEO run the organization. So I guess, you know, again, on governance, I'll speak a bit about an interesting situation. When I went, after I left mining, and that was in 2016, I moved on to the Tribal Council, and I did a year CEO of Battleford's Agency Tribal Chiefs Investments. So a moment. One sec, I've just got to, yeah, we're good. Sorry, kids are coming home. I just had to check that real quick. So with okay, now I'm good. With BAT Investments is a really interesting situation where, you know, I came on board and we had a first alliance for a construction company that was really the main focus and did work in the energy sector, did a lot of contract labor jobs, and had an interesting situation where a couple of months after I came on board, Husky Energy, their pipeline broke and spilled a lot of oil into the North Saskatchewan River. So I got the call. Fortunately, there's a few lessons in this, but fortunately, you know, I'd been around. I was on the emergency management team at BHP Billiton, so I kind of knew what their, you know, they'd be thinking of, and I was able to help the tribal council in terms of this is what emergency management looks like, and you know how it's structured, and help to the response, and you know, advising our leadership on that as well. But it was you know, it was an unfortunate situation. You know, we turned it into a win on the business side. Obviously, when things like that happen, there's going to be a lot of legal stuff or damages done down the road. But at the same time, that partner was really important to us in terms of business, because you know, was shortly after that I started looking through their plans and reports, and they had 16 SAGD plants, you know, basically in situ plants where they're extracting oil, planned for the region. And I knew that we hadn't had a lot of interaction or knew anything about those, or not much anyways, about those 16 facilities. And then I, you know, found out doing some digging that we were, you know, that was basically the largest oil play going on in the province at the time. So we had to get this really fine balance between, you know, seeking, I guess, you know, pursuing allowing the chiefs and the tribal council to do what they need to do in terms of the environment and the oil spill, and reparations for that, versus the business who were doing. And that was a real balancing act. And I think, you know, that goes to show that, you know, it's really important, again, that line between governance and CEO, that, you know, when the board sticks to strategy, although there's a lot of political representatives on the board, if they're sticking to strategy and not getting to the business, and then you have your CEO doing the business, right, with industry, and you keep those two separate, that's going to help in situations like that. So anyways, life went on. I did a term there, and then I was asked to do a term with First Nations Power Authority as their CEO and interim CEO while they look for leadership. I've been on the board for about 7 years. So for those of you that aren't familiar with FNPA, probably most people are, but we begin in Saskatchewan. We're doing work across the country, and we do basically all forms of community energy planning, but really focus on utility scale energy. So we have an agreement with SaskPower in terms of how many megawatts that we actually procure ourselves and have people put in proposals to FNPA. So it's not SaskPower that's controlling how the power projects are procured. We have an indigenous ways of doing that, right? We do it our way, not their way. Doesn't mean there's not rules and things, but we do it differently and help people get prepared. And I think, you know, I want to talk a bit about that, because in going back to planning and just mention it, that it's really key with these large utility scale projects, and a lot of people are looking at them. They take a long time to plan for. And just words of caution with these utility scale projects, if you're looking like at 20 megawatts or more, for sure. You know, even a 5 megawatt is a fairly significant project, but 20 megawatts up to, you know, 200 megawatts. If you're looking at solar or wind farms, there's a lot of, you know, there's so much advanced planning in terms of siting, particularly, you know, having land that's in the right area with the right renewable resource, but where the connections are to the nearest stations. Because if you could have great land and a great resource, but it doesn't fit into the energy grid, right? So that interconnection to the grid is really important. And so we're playing, I think we're going to get ahead, and we're doing a work at FNPA to do that, but where First Nations are actually, taking the time and knowing how to develop those resources. It takes 2 years to get something something that's large permitted. It takes 2 years just to do the environmental work, right? And then you've got, a couple of years to put together, your partnerships and those sorts of things to be able ready to bid it. So I guess, you're looking at, for any large projects, it's really 5 years. And it's unfortunate. I've seen with some bidding across the country, and I've worked with proponents to help them bid and win bids for renewable energy projects across the country. And, when the RFPs come out, and, it has for Indigenous inclusion, it has to be Indigenous partnership or a certain percentage ownership. A lot of times, if you haven't started 5 years ago before the RFP out to develop your own resource, you won't be ready to bid. So unfortunately, right now we're in a situation where a lot of the RFPs, not from FNPA, but the ones by the provincial or territorial power companies, they'll come out, and it kind of puts us in a spot where we're playing catch up on having an actual project to bid. So it becomes this big dating game between project proponents that have done that 5 years of work to find their Indigenous partners, and Indigenous partners approaching the project proponents. So I just wanted to mention that because I've got a lot of experience in that area. And I think the more we can plan our project, but do it realistically, and not put too much money into it until you've got an opportunity, and you can see the direct pathway to getting an agreement with the power companies to actually make that renewable utility scale project come through. So those are just really complicated projects. I wanted to mention that. I guess I'll talk about my one other contract CEO following that opportunity. Lots of good lessons there. I wasn't the entrepreneur, but the indoor vertical farm, Nutraponics. You can look up videos on YouTube. It was a facility outside of Edmonton that was the largest indoor aquaponic vertical farm in Canada. And they were founded back in 2012. They really were the pioneers in the science for aquaponics. So that's when you have fish in tanks in a building, and the fish turns their waste into nutrients, and that's fed through racks with plants in them. And LED lights provide the light for the plants. So it's you're going to see a lot more of it in the future. There's more being built in Canada. Greenhouse is different. Greenhouse is you don't have that. You're using other nutrients from soil or fertilizer or chemicals. One good thing about aquaponics is it's a natural system. It achieves organic certification, so it's organic product. So much different than greenhouses again. But this was an opportunity that I came into the CEO position. They'd been doing R&D and we had our facility going, we had customers, but because it's new technology, I need to plan for to basically upgrade the facility and go from our alpha system to a beta system. We work with several universities on everything from the bioreactor to the lights to ventilation and HVAC to get these things right. We worked on automation. So we had a really, leading science. We'd got, won awards for innovative technology at global shows. In Singapore was one of them, and Hong Kong was another. So everything was looked to be wonderful. And it was a limited partnership, so there wasn't many shareholders. But at the end of the day, there's a group of shareholders that said they were going to bring money to the table to recapitalize for this upgrade and to launch our new marketing plan. And we had the best plan done. We had the best everything, best science awards. Everyone believed us. But at the end of the day, that governance piece broke down, and the share capital from the shareholders didn't come in, and we had to close up shop. So another sad story of, again, partners, governance, due diligence. No matter how good your idea or product is, if you don't have, you haven't done your due diligence on how the plan's going to go, you're not sure on how that's going to go, when there's not, clear communication between the partners that are governing that business, you can create troubles down the road. Things will happen that are unexpected and not go to plan. And I think this is normal for entrepreneurs. We're supposed to fail a lot in what we do. So a lot of hard lessons learned. So hopefully I've learned enough, and this next one's going to be it. So that's what happened with Nutraponics. Leadership, again, I've had the opportunity to go through quite a few leadership programs, working with companies, and they've just been excellent. And I think it's, I have a rule that, and I think this is true of anyone. And some of the entrepreneurs I've worked with, that I've interviewed for projects, or businesses I've worked with, when these topics of governance and leadership comes up, everyone knows they're important, but after some hard knocks and some years in business, people often pay more attention to them. But really making sure that at the governance level, like I remember one business I was interviewing, the partners, there's I think 4 partners, and you do have to have board meetings, but be rigorous about that, even if it's a small leadership team or a small ownership team, about how your yearly planning cycles and how you're going to work together and what you're going to do at each meeting. I do that for my for-profit or not-for-profit boards. That roadmap of what's going to happen every meeting, because the board should know what it's going to do at every meeting. You shouldn't be handling the issues of the day. That's what the CEO does. You're going through your yearly cycle, making the decisions that your CEO needs to do what they need to do, and doing your due diligence, but really keeping it at that strategic level throughout the year. So on the leadership end, a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs have said that focusing not just on their own leadership, but that of the team, was one of the things, a few years into it, that they're paying more and more attention to. And one of my rules of thumb is, if you've got any direct reports, it's you should be meeting with them every single week. And it's kind of like that Army rule of you only have 7 reports. I think that's the most powerful thing you can do as a leader, is have that face time and stick to it. Only by exception, don't have that meeting. Obviously, if you're away on vacation, but things come up and you can't. A lot of people, I've heard people say, oh, we don't need weekly meetings. We see each other in the hallway or at the coffee shop. But really, that's, you're not going to have the quality of conversation that you're going to have as if you sit down with someone for an hour every week and say, okay, what's your plans this week? And, what happened this last week, kind of thing. So, and talk through it, and make sure you're always, raising the highlights on things down the road, and giving constant feedback. And those are skills, whether it be, giving feedback to people, giving difficult feedback, change management, the cycles that you can expect your teams to go through when you're making changes in an organization. Conflict resolution, really engaging employees, having them take ownership. And I think, those are all skills that people need to learn. And a lot of people, and there's all kinds of leaders. You don't have to be I find that people that say they're a natural leader are the ones that tell other people, just do what I tell you to do. Be a good leader, making quick decisions and telling people what to do. But really, I find the key to leadership is making sure you have a team that, is empowered and engaged in what you're doing and is part of the plan, and you're trusting them to get those jobs done, and you're keeping the communication up. So those are, that's something that you can learn. There's leadership training out there and all kinds of resources you can tap into. Well, I shouldn't say all kinds, there's books and things, but if you can find a training program, it's great. Or, mentorship, having mentors to help you along. And, some of the difficult conversations are something when you have that kind of training, to actually have the confidence that you're going to be able to have a hard conversation with someone, but you have a good way of doing it. So, leadership, the more leadership you can do, and obviously it goes with that succession planning. You want a strong team that of senior, middle managers, because everyone's going to move on, and having that talent pipeline being developed throughout the organization. So that's really been my journey. I guess next step is we'll hopefully sell a lot more product and have a lot more orders coming through. We're in a bit of a pickle now because we kind of needed to conclude our agreement to before we went and got our financing and finished everything up to fully launch. So things dragged on, but we'll get there. But again, it's making sure that this order was a little unexpected because we've been talking to people for a year, so we're kind of bootstrapping it to get through until we get everything else in place. So make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed before you jump in with both feet. And make sure, again, like it's difficult. I know traditionally we do things on a handshake, but you really need things on paper. And we thought we had total agreement as to what this agreement would look like last summer, like really by the end of summer. But we thought we'd be done by Christmas, and here we are, going into May with it done. So I'm glad we took the time to make sure that we clearly agreed on all the details of how we're going to work together. Because now we're both on the same page, and we know that we're set up for success down the road, and there's going to be no surprises in how we're approaching things or what our responsibilities are. We know that all the terms are going to work for us. So thanks. I guess I'll stop there if anyone has any questions.
Oh, well, thank you, Lee, I really appreciate how you took us behind the scenes, talked about the realities of entrepreneurship. I think the conflict resolution piece and learning how to talk about difficult conversations in a good way, I think that's really important. Sometimes when we hear about entrepreneurship, we all hear about all that good stuff, and there's good stuff, but we also don't always necessarily hear that, you're going to fail at some things. And that's okay. That's part of the journey of entrepreneurship. So you kind of peeled back that layer, let us have a peek at that. So I'm curious, so if anyone else has any questions, get ready your comments. But I'm curious, when you were I think you were in the Chicago O'Hare Airport, and you're like, a change is coming, a transition needs to happen.
Yes.
When you had that moment, were you nervous at all? Like, did nerves follow that? Or you're like, I need to do this? Like,
it was a leap of faith. It was really, I need to do this. I see other people consulting. I know that, there's various companies that need someone like me doing this job in other companies. Right. But it was just kind of like, I have to make this happen. So let's put the plan together and start, calling people. I guess that's another thing. The more calls you make to know there's going to be business coming in the door, the better you feel. And that goes for the first time that I did that last year, or at the beginning of my career, this last year when I was, planning this business. We touched base with a number of retailers and resellers of cleaning products, and sent out samples and knew the business was going to be there. So, the more planning you do, the less nervous you get.
It's all about that planning.
And yes, and really talking to the market, knowing your market.
Yeah.
And if hey, I've got a really good feeling that they're going to buy when it's time, then then it becomes a lot easier to take those risks that you got to take.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. I really liked how you said it. You took that leap of faith. And sometimes when you do that, you trust that the net will appear, but also knowing that you put in that effort, you put in that planning, you put in that research as well, and making those connections. Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments? The floor is open. We have a couple of moments. Ken had said, excellent broad discussion on the topic. Time well spent. Thank you. So thank you for your comment, Ken. Anybody have any questions, comments for our guest speaker?
Just a quick question about how do we connect our culture, like our resources? We have wood bison and wood bison ranch. How do you connect that to economic development? How do you, because people don't want to sell our culture. We don't want to sell our culture, but we have this huge conservation piece that's connected to our provincial park that's on our territory.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Okay, so what's the business would be?
Ecotourism.
Pardon?
Ecotourism with the wood bison and our provincial park that we have on our territory.
Great. I think, I've looked at, I've worked in, I guess, tourism before and been around a bit. I think that with culture, I think, I would say when you're planning a business, like I've worked on Indigenous brands or in let's say indigenized services. And I think, or at the University of Saskatchewan, we indigenized the university. And I think, doing it, you're going to be doing that at the strategic level, kind of like, here's our strategy for this business. How do we integrate culture in how can culture be integrated into that? But also, using your own protocols when it comes to doing things in a good way, and things that, talking to, elders, if you're doing something cultural, to make sure that you're doing it in a good way. When it comes to branding, I've worked a lot of companies for Indigenous logos or logos that, or things that companies use that have an Indigenous look and feel to it. And again, it's really being, doing that the right way, getting the professional help you need. But a lot of times it's tough to find advertising agencies, and if you're doing something, there's not a lot of Indigenous advertising agencies around, or even Indigenous people working in graphic design and people that do ads and logos and those sorts of things. So even on the visual side, making sure that however you're getting it done, that you got that feedback loop, say, here's how we're using our culture and our promotion or our logo, and having, using your protocols and elders to give their, I guess, input to make sure you're doing that right. I hope I'm answering some of this. And I think, again, when it comes to, the strategy and the governance of the strategy, and really looking at that, working through, we want to do this, what's our values as we're going to approach this?
Yeah, we're still in the ideation phases of that. We're still doing some community engagement with that, but we are at the stage where I think we're going to need consulting help with that strategic planning. So it's part of why I came online. I read your profile, and you probably have a group there that perhaps we could reach out to.
I'm sure I could refer someone. Yeah, if you want to follow up with me, I could probably find someone. But yeah, if you're at the strategic, you're welcome. Yeah, strategy phase is important. That's much different from the business planning phase. Feasibility study and business planning. So going through all those steps is important. Starting with a broad strategy, and then, okay, how are we going to do this? And then getting the right people to do that feasibility study to see how that will make money. Consultants, like you said, and then moving that into the business planning stage.
Yeah, that's a really great question, Robert. Thank you. Thank you for lending your voice, your question to this conversation today. We do have but a few moments left. Does anyone have any, one person?
I got one.
All right, let's hear it.
It's Milton. It's kind of a follow-up actually on the previous question. And Lee spoke about knowing the market you're getting in, whether it be cleaning products, in the food space, whatever, servicing the mining industry, whatever it is. What value would you say there is in whether you're an individual entrepreneur or you're a community-owned business that being Indigenous brings to, the mining sector, the agriculture sector? What is that?
Okay.
And what that makes an Indigenous owned business different than just all the other businesses that are out there in the space already?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Milton. This is really with our cleaning products, what we're doing. There's just a demand to buy more from Indigenous businesses, and I really noticed a difference with that and what companies are doing to support communities who their social responsibility programs has really increased in the last year. People want to have that connection with Indigenous businesses and organizations. So obviously on the procurement end, it's really powerful. We found some programs in our space for our products we just kind of didn't know existed, that we could take advantage of in doing our planning. The federal government, they've increased their target for average procurement from 3% to 8%. I think there's a difference between, and it depends what market. And if you're looking at the consumer market, our play, we have a product. We're an Indigenous owned company, so companies want to do business with us, but our product is, not Indigenous in its branding, right? It's aimed at the consumer. That's much different than having, a construction company, dealing with a resource sector partner that, as part of their planning, they want to make sure that local communities are engaged. So it's really about them doing business. So they're benefiting communities in the region they're doing business in, but also that, they're improving their relationships and being engaged with those communities so they can have good long-term sustainable relationships. And in mining, that's what it's all about. And then you've got, people like federal, provincial governments that have targets that they have to meet, and they want to, to reach those targets, buy from Indigenous businesses, basically, no matter what it is, right? And procurement takes longer time to do. I'll put it that way, like public sector procurement, it takes, anything that's RFP takes a long time. So, dealing with the private sector is a lot easier, but there's big bucks in the public sector as well. If you've got the patience and time and learn how to deal with them. Doesn't matter when you're doing RFPs and bidding on RFPs, it's really a technical detail game, and being prepared for it and building relationships before that comes out, no matter what you're selling. And then, another area is just like the ecotourism business. There's some people that just want Indigenous experiences and want Indigenous brands. So there's great ways that we can use our culture to give, people what they need, or what they're looking for in their life, and just like things Indigenous, and doing that in a good way, like, with a good brand. And there's certainly market out there for that. Yeah. So I think there's 4 different reasons why, people are buying Indigenous, right? So you kind of got to look at that market and why they're doing this, and what's the best way to position being Indigenous in that market. I think that, in that, whatever market you're in, it's, creating that network. We have a great advantage right now. The various associations we have, like Aboriginal Indigenous associations, and the help that's out there. There's a lot of help. So just tapping into whatever you can to build the networks, so that you're creating that network that's going to help make your business successful, whatever that means in your space and market.
Yes, I echo what Robert says in the chat box. Really great explanation on that question. So thank you. Milton, thank you for asking the question. I see that our time is up. You just really offered your great knowledge, some great insight as well. So thank you so much, Lee, for lending your time this afternoon with us. Thank you all for joining us. We are just honored that you're here. Remember to fill out those evaluations or the surveys that will be sent to you after today's presentation. And we hope to see you again. So have a good rest of the day, and may you walk in a good way that honors Creator, our land, and all of our relations. So take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Bye now.